Hey folks, just want to show you a demo of how you can integrate Event Catalog into Backstage, into your developer portals. For those who do not know what Backstage is, it's a developer portal, open source developer portal by Spotify. Very, very popular, and you can kind of go to their website here, Backstage.io, to get started. Now, I'm assuming in this video you have Backstage already installed and you want to understand how to integrate Event Catalog. So in this session, I'm going to be showing you how to get started, how to install the plugin, how to use the plugin, and how to get that catalog mapped to your services and your APIs inside your Backstage portal. So the first thing we're going to do is actually, let's head over to our Backstage instance. So I have this actually installed on my computer. This is one that you get out the box. So you have all sorts of things, plugins, you have packages and examples and things like that. So if we head back to the browser, I have this running on my machine. So you can see this is Backstage. So I have a home here, APIs and documentation. So everything here is actually configurable with Backstage. But let's have a look at how we get Event Catalog inside of this. So the first thing I want to do is actually add more dummy data, because the only thing I have at the moment is a component and an API or something like that. So I'm going to head over to the code, and what are we going to do is actually go to our entities YAML file here. And this actually specifies some of the components, APIs, and things that we have in Backstage. Now I already have a list here configured that we're going to use. So if I just replace that with this, zoom in. But all I'm doing here really is just defining some systems, some components, websites, some APIs. Down here I have a backend service, which type is service. This is a service in the project that we'll be using, and an API that we'll also be using. So some basic stuff here for Backstage experts. So if we close this, and if we go back to the UI and refresh, cool. So as you can see, we have a backend service, we have an example website, we have a front-end service. So we're going to actually just be playing around with this backend service for now. If I click on this, we can see some information. This is all Backstage actually. We can see some about, we can see some relations and links and subcomponents, all this wonderful stuff. So how do we get Event Catalog in here? Well, we can actually add Event Catalog in two ways. First of all, we can add Event Catalog as a card to our overview page or any page that we want in Backstage, or we can add some extra tabs up here that allow us to integrate Event Catalog into Backstage. So first of all, what I'm going to start with is adding a new tab. Okay, so going back to the code, what I want to do is stop Backstage, and I am going to add Backstage plugin. Okay, Event Catalog Backstage plugin Event Catalog. So this is going to add to the project, the plugin to our project, and that's it. So once that's installed, what we're going to do is actually start using this component. So what we do is we go over to the packages. So this is a brand new project. If you have an existing project, it might differ, but hopefully you can follow along. So we go to this app directory here, and then we go inside source, components, catalog, entity page. All right. And this has loads of like the components and the structure of how our Backstage catalog looks, I guess. So what we're going to do here is actually import something from Event Catalog plugin. What we're going to import is the first component, which is this entity page. Okay, Event Catalog documentation entity page. So down here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for a place to put this. So we have this idea of a service page, I believe. No, not the service page, but we have some roots somewhere. I think if I go to CI/CD, service entity page, here we go. So we have the overview, we have a root for CI/CD, we have some other stuff, API and things like that, and docs. So what I'm going to do down here is actually going to create a new root. And this root, let's just copy this one. So let's call this Event Catalog Docs with a title of, let's just call Event Catalog Docs for now. And what I'm going to put in here, I'm going to replace this with our Event Catalog documentation component, and it accepts a prop, the page. The page can be discovered, docs, or visualizer. So we're going to embed the docs for now inside of this. And that's it. That gives us a new root. So if we head over back to the UI, let's see what's happened. Okay, and now what we have is a new Event Catalog Docs section. So if we click on this, we actually get an error because now we need to set up the app config. So let's go back and do that. So if we go back to Visual Studio Code and we're looking for this app config. So app config, as far as I'm aware, this is where you set up some configurations for your Backstage instance. But we also have an Event Catalog configuration to add here. So let me just grab an example of one and put that in here. So the first thing we're going to do to get rid of all this, the first thing we're going to do is give it the URL. This is the URL of your hosted event catalog. This could be localhost if you're developing locally, or wherever your event catalog instance lives. Now at the moment these accept public URLs. If you have private or lockdown URLs, please raise an issue or get in contact and we can have a look at how we can fix this. But at the moment the version 1 of this plugin actually just embeds it using a URL. So if I save this and then let's go back to the application. The application no longer errors, which is fantastic, but what now we have this error here is that we cannot find a mapping between this service in Event Catalog. So what this really means is your Backstage has services and components and systems and domains that are a particular kind of format, and Event Catalog has a different type of format, right? So all we need to do now is just map your Backstage resources to Event Catalog resources. So the plugin understands, okay, I am currently viewing this type of resource. I know where to get this in Event Catalog. That's all we're doing here. So let's go back and add some of this stuff. So what we can do here is actually add this information into this YAML config. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a services map. And what we do here is it's an array of different things. So the first thing is here, it says this is the Backstage name. So as you can see, backend service, that's what we've called this particular service. And Event Catalog ID just so happens to be an inventory service. This is what I have in my Event Catalog instance. Your ID would be different. This would be the ID of your resource, the ID of your service in this case. Here, we'll come back to that in a minute, but also you can actually specify if you really want to a version. So you can say, okay, this is actually version 100, because in Event Catalog has different versions based on your version strategy, if you're using versions or not. If you don't provide this, it will use the latest version. So for those who want to do that, just don't add that as an optional field. So let's go back to the UI and see what's happened. So as you can see here, that's refreshed magically for us, and you can actually see that Event Catalog documentation is now embedded within this service. So now I have this backend service, I have my lovely Backstage stuff going on, but I can equally go here and instantly see, okay, this is the service that's in Event Catalog, which is pretty cool. So what else can we do? We can actually embed the visualizer and other components. So let's have a look and do that. So let's head back over to the code and have a look at how that looks. So if we head back to the code, and now we're in this entity page, let's go back there. What I'm going to do is create a new page, and let's duplicate this. And I'm going to call this Event Catalog Visualizer. And let's put Visualizer here. Visualizer. And then here, rather than the page being docs, we can just specify the visualizer. So let's go back to the UI and see what's happened. As you can see here, we now got this new tab called the visualizer. If I click on that, then it embeds the visualizer directly into your Backstage service. So remember, we're mapping the backend service to the inventory service in this case. So what I can do now is click on some of these, start dragging this thing around, zoom out, click on this. You know, as usual, the Event Catalog functionality is here. I can download the visual here into a PDF and, you know, that kind of stuff. So one more, let's add the other thing, the final thing, which is the discover table. So like a way to discover messages of your service. Let's go back to Event Catalog, to the code, and have a look here. We'll duplicate this. Let's call this discover, and let's just call it messages as an example. And let's add the discover prop to the page. Now let's go back, and then you can see Event Catalog messages. So you can name these tabs whatever you want. If I click on this, now I can see the grid view that Event Catalog offers. Now I can see the inventory service, and I can see it has these particular messages. I can see it has an event called order confirmed. I can see it has a query called list inventory list, and I can see it has a command called update inventory, which is the same things as we see here, right? We see events and queries and commands can all go into the service, and the service also queries something else downstream. So that's one way you can do it. This is like the initial version of the catalog plugin, so you can have these tabs. The other thing you can do is also add cards into this view. So let's do that now. So we've got this about and relations. So if I go back to the code, and the first thing we're going to do is actually import some cards. So it comes with a couple of cards at the moment in this particular version. So there's a visualizer card, and then if I look for about overview content, this sounds about right. Let's just have a look. overview content. Let's just duplicate that and see what happens and go back. Yeah, we got 2 abouts. Cool. So what I can do here is actually, okay, rather than do this, actually do the event catalog visualizer grid, and that accepts no props, and go back to the UI. As you can see, it directly does that. So it knows, you know, how to embed this. It embeds this into the area that you defined. We define this as a grid item with, what's that, a 6 column width here. So if I did a 12, I'm not entirely sure what would happen. You can see it would come here, and we could set the height and all sorts of things. But let's go back to 6, and then you can see that nicely there. The other thing we can do is duplicate this and actually have an event catalog message card. If we go back to the UI, you'll see that this is the messages that you have. We probably put that on a 12 just to give it some more real estate, as you can see here. And we can probably set the height. Let's just set the height to be, I don't know, 20 EMs. Refresh that, and you can see the height is changing there. Let's just make that a bit bigger, 50. And now you can see that we got 50, and we can start seeing it properly. So this is the Backstage integration plugin. Remember, you can map all sorts of things. You can actually also map APIs. So here, if you go here, you'll see no event catalog thing going on. But if we go back into our code and we go back to the config, we can then grab an APIs mapper, I guess. So we can say, okay, now I want you to map this particular API entity into this notification service. If I save this, I might need to just restart this actually. So Backstage picks up the new config variables. When this refreshes, we should be able to then do what we want. So this now knows about event catalog. So what we can do now is go back, and then inside the entity page again, and we have this API card. So let's just duplicate that and see what happens, just to make sure. So we've got 2 abouts, great. And then what we can do here is just say, okay, actually I want the visualizer, event catalog, visualizer card, and save this. And you can see that's refreshed. This is now the notification service. So I can map whatever I want to my APIs and map whatever I want to my services. If you want additional support for different mappings or features or anything you want, feel free to raise an issue on the GitHub. If you have any questions or want to get started, head over to EventCatalog.dev, where you can find all the documentation. You click this Get Started and then scroll down into Backstage. Click this here, and you will start to see how it works, get more documentation, the install command, the configuration, using components. And if you want to understand the configuration more, you can come here and learn how to configure your Backstage. So if you've got any questions or issues, you can click on this link here. This is all open source, so you can come and raise some issues or pull requests, or come join us on Discord and ask any questions that you have. So if you've made it this far, thank you very much for watching. I hope this Backstage integration helps you. This is the first version, an initial version. There's much more we can do here. Backstage has backend support, runtime support. So if you have any ideas how Event Catalog can integrate and make your life easier, just honestly feel free to ping me. And thank you for watching this.